That Tannery walk was so fun. Like, I don't know if like the general public would be as hyped as me and Taylor were about it, but I, like the whole time I was like, hey, can we stop here and take a photo of this? Hey, well, explain this to me. What is this? What is that? And I was just like, we're going to be here for 6 hours if I have my way with this tour.
Yeah, you can do the long tour, you can do the short tour, but I thought we had made good time.
But we talked about like potentially doing, coming back out and actually filming some of the processes, because when you do those boot videos, you know, we'll talk about like a corrected grain, or we'll talk about like a nubuck leather, and we show people the finished product,
sure, but
we don't actually show them the process. And so like documenting the process and showing people like, oh, this is how it's actually done, without divulging any trade secrets, obviously. Right. You know, I think people would really be interested in seeing that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the general public, when it comes to leather and, you know, what is in the product, shoes, bags, belts, they don't know the difference between nubuck and aniline and full finish and corrected, and very, very few people. I mean, they got a little bit of an idea, but it's hard to grasp unless you really get into a tannery and, you know, take that tour.
Yeah, we just barely finished a series on cutting apart a bunch of boots that were from like a barefoot boot or shoe perspective, where they had like really wide toe boxes and like really slim soles, and every single one of those didn't use any leather. Like none of them use like leather at all.
Really?
And they always have this really heavy leaning towards like eco-friendly initiatives and like all this stuff, and they're made of plastic. Oh, and so I'm like, you know, obviously everyone in the room here is like pro leather.
Yeah. But I'm like, the manufacturer on them?
Probably somewhere in China, for being honest. You know, it's just textile, and
grab them out of a store and tore them apart.
And it's really interesting because they all their whole thing is like return to nature. Like, your feet should be wider and splayed out, and like all these materials they're recycled or they're recyclable. But I'm like, they're plastic. Like, what's wrong with leather?
They don't shape to your foot one bit,
and just
it doesn't recycle well.
Yeah. So that was like a question I had for you guys, where it's like, do you guys feel like leather is more eco-friendly than plastic? Because like, I feel like it is, but also I'm not as involved in the tanning process.
There's no doubt. I mean, look, you're utilizing full-on petroleum. You saw the disaster of the train that just derailed in Ohio, and you know that stuff catches on fire, and it is hazardous to your health. Well, and that was part of that was plastics, chemicals that, you know, to produce plastics and other petrochemical products.
Yeah.
So,
because you guys mostly do chrome tan leather, right? Or basically all chrome tan.
It's mostly chrome.
So it's chrome tan, but I think there's kind of a misconception on what a chrome tan leather is, at least being, you know, what we do here is we're retanning.
Right.
And so there's, you know, 2 different steps in the tanning process.
Try to keep this point.
There's 2 different steps in the tanning process. Yeah, lost my train of thought. But, you know, you're doing the rawhide tanning, which is just a preservation stage. And then you do what we do here is, you know, making a leather that goes into a final product. And so what we're doing is we're taking a bunch of those natural, you know, what you saw out in the plant is, you know, you take veg extracts and you take emulsified oils and waxes, and you're ultimately putting those back into the product to make something that's significantly more durable.
Right.
And that's going to age well, and it's going to last for, I mean, as long as, I mean, it's going to outlast the sole of the shoe, at least. So
the sponsor of this video is FlexiSpot. They make the best standing desks, because to be completely honest with you, we've ordered the cheap Amazon ones, and because of ads we've done for FlexiSpot, we have the nice FlexiSpots. And there is a huge difference between them. The FlexiSpots are just a lot more sturdy. The tabletops are actual wood, and the components are a lot heavier duty. Even the motors are better, because one of the motors burned out on one of the cheap desks. So I was like, let's just take a look and see if it actually is better. And they are. So with FlexiSpot, you know that your money is going towards actual upgraded components. And the one desk that they've sent us a couple times that we really, really like is the E7. And that's because it's super stable. It moves up and down really steadily and really, really control. It doesn't like jolt things around. It doesn't wiggle all over the place. And more importantly, for tall guys like me, it actually goes to a decent height. And at that height, it's not wiggling all over the place. because its height range is from 22.8 inches all the way up to 48.4 inches. And they say it fits customers from 4'2" up to 6'3", and I'm 6'4", and it fits me just fine. And one thing I really like about FlexiSpot is they have a ton of really cool add-ons. They have monitor mounts, they have like little stands for your monitor to sit on, they have little cord organizers, they have little things that pop up so you can plug in different laptops, monitors, USBs, so you can kind of kit out your own desk. I really enjoy that aspect of it. And the really nice thing is they offer a 30-day risk-free return policy and a 15-year warranty. So huge thanks to FlexiSpot. Be sure to check out their desks. They are a step above the rest of the desks that I've ever tried. They're worth the money, so check them out below.
Well, and like the big thing maybe this is a bad argument, but I'm like, if I buried a pair of full leather shoes and I buried a pair of like synthetic shoes, I guarantee the full leather shoes are going to biodegrade and return to nature like all these barefoot shoe companies claim to be, and these eco-friendly brands that use lots of plastics, versus that plastic-based shoe and petroleum-based shoe. I'm like, that could be around for 1,000 years.
It's like a plastic bottle
going
to the dump.
Yeah. And so I'm always like, it's interesting because, especially in the current political climate, it seems like everything is like very against like animal use or like animal products and stuff. And to me, being raised on a small farm in Mona, Utah, like I was raised on like a cattle farm and an alfalfa farm. And so to me, like I saw that whole process of how animals are born, animals are raised, animals are slaughtered, animals go into my mouth, feed me, which fuels my body to go take care of the animals on the farm. So you see that cyclical process.
Right. You got it.
You know, and I just think that's missing with a lot of people and their lack of understanding.
I think it's kind of because sustainability is kind of it's a big thing in material manufacturing. And there's kind of two ways to think about it. There's either, you know, are you stripping out a material and you're saying, okay, we're putting less in, therefore less is coming out, versus, okay, are you, you can do things in leather tanning like, okay, we can reduce our water consumption. You can transition to, you know, more energy efficient, you know, machinery or drying methods. But ultimately, I think the more sustainable thing is to, you know, make a durable product that's not going to end up in a landfill.
Yeah, that is an interesting aspect.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to go and, you know, if you go buy a pair of like Knicks or Whites, I don't think you're going to end up throwing away a $500 pair of boots.
Right.
I think it's, you know, there's the cost of the product, and then you look at, you know, what is the durability, and I think people are becoming more aware of it. But, you know, there's still, I think people will always have, you know, some issue with, you know, using hides. I mean, there's always going to be people that say like, oh, it's bad because, you know, animal welfare. But ultimately what we're kind of doing here is, I think it's kind of like a tired trope, I guess, but, you know, we are recycling essentially.
Yeah.
You're using a product that, you know, is essentially waste, and, you know, adding value to it so that it can then go in and have a
second life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a big argument that I see, a counter argument I see on the channel a lot is like, oh, leather isn't a byproduct, it's a co-product essentially, where it's like part of the expense or like the way that they make money by raising cattle is selling the hides. And so it's a weird justification to me, because I'm like, yeah, but we still need the beef. Like people are still eating meat, people still depend on it, and not everyone wants to just go vegan, and not everyone can go vegan or whatever. And the wildest thing about all of that to me is being raised on a farm. You know, when you harvest the alfalfa or you go out and cut the corn down or whatever, it's like you see how many animals get churned up into the machinery. You see like raccoons, coyotes, all these different things, and you're like, oh, so it's not just you're harvesting plants. You have to kill animals to harvest those plants. You got to displace animals, and so it's, you know, I think it's an interesting argument because there's no definite right answer or wrong answer, and I honestly think a lot of the confusion from people and their anger towards like leather goods comes from just that lack of information and understanding of how maybe not the real world, but the natural world works, you know?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, it's interesting. We've had a discussion at the Leather Allied Trades Association about trying to make people more aware of it. I mean, that's sort of on their agenda right now to do that, because there is no doubt the cost, even though you can produce today a vinyl type upholstery or shoe product or seat cover at a lower cost, environmentally it is more impactful. Just because of the way it's brought to market, produced, and then goes into a product, and then the disposal of it. So leather, people do have to be made aware of that, and some of these associations are really pushing for it these days. So.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the key to it, right? Is it's just that lack of information, and that's why I want to do this interview or chat, is just because it's like not many people. There's so few tanneries in the U.S. and like there's so few boot makers in the U.S. Everything gets shipped overseas, but you guys are like still doing it. And because how long has Seidel been around for? Also, I apologize for calling it Seidel for the last 2 years.
Seidel, yeah.
Yeah, I've screwed it up the entire time. Fritz Jr. didn't send me an email and be like, "Hey, idiot, you're saying our brand wrong for the last 2 years."
So we didn't really do an introduction. You want to cut to an introduction?
No, we can do it. Yeah, but
So I'll just say it so you know where we're at. I'm Fritz Seidel Sr. This is my son, Fritz Seidel Jr. He's the fourth generation. I'm third generation doing this, manufacturing leather in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're a specialty leather producer and do make leather for Rose Anvil and a host of other fine manufacturers in the United States.
So, yeah, you guys make some of the leather from actually you do intro. Intro.
So I'm Fritz Jr. That's basically the.
What does Fritz stand? Is that your first name, Fritz, or is it like
Frederick?
Yeah, okay. We're both Frederick, and then I don't know where the nickname Fritz came from.
This point, there you go.
I don't know where the nickname Fritz came from, but
it's a cool nickname.
It's
I like it.
I'm jealous. Had it and I got it. So,
so were you called like Fritzy as a kid?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it's such like an Eastern U.S. like nickname, like Fritz. I've never met a single Fritz in my entire life.
There's a handful of them that I've met,
too.
but
yeah, they're around.
They're around.
But yeah, you guys make leather for like all these brands that we really cover a lot on the channel, because being a channel that cuts boots in half, a lot of the best brands or the brands that shine the brightest on the channel are all these brands that are U.S. made, lots of leather, and you guys tan the leather for like J.K. White's, Nick's. I think you do Frank's too, like all these Pacific Northwest brands, probably some West Coast stuff. So you guys are making quite literally the most heavy duty, most durable leather, I would argue, in the entire world. And not many people realize that.
I'll tell you, it's taken years. It's certainly taken most of my career to sort of develop into that. As I was first getting in as junior's age, I started traveling the West Coast, and at that point, there were many more tanneries here in the United States. Manasseh Block was one of the large producers, and also Saul's, which was in California, both those. And they were making a kip version of the logger leather, which was for caulk boots. And I kept on running across this stuff because we were mostly a lightweight tanner at that time. And I would make samples, and the guys would critique it, and it wasn't quite right. But over time, I started to get a little traction with it, and we figured out how to make it.
Okay.
And it really was. It took some evolution to get there. This was no overnight, and a lot of the products that you actually see in the tannery, I mean, these are formulas that have been worked on for years, and you rerun and you refine the product to the need, and so we've cut our teeth in doing this, and it's sometimes a little painful, and other times it's had big rewards. Yeah, but we do seem to have a good platform out there at this point for the boot business.
Yeah, we walked around. It seemed like a lot of the names on the little tickets and stuff were brands that we've know pretty well and covered on the channel. Even some that I didn't realize, and I won't divulge any secrets by any means. But like I was like, oh, I know that brand. Oh, I know that brand. So what percentage do you feel like of your leather goes to like the boot market?
I think it's probably. I mean, you look at the U.S. market is kind of like a weird one to be in, because we do make for basically, most of the domestic manufacturing for footwear.
Really?
But it's not I wouldn't say it's enough to fully sustain a tannery. So, I mean, you have to branch off and you have to have a really diverse portfolio of products just to, you know, because even though there are some larger programs to run, they're not huge. I mean, they are big, but not, you know, run one leather as a tannery. And
here's maybe a better way to put it. When you buy in a truckload of hides, not everything's going to make one product. I mean, you could do it if you were making upholstery. That's fairly easy to make. But the type of products we make, it's not so easy. It's hard to dry. It's hard to drive the retan in. It's hard to keep it tight. And even within the loads that come through, there can be some that are marginal for break or the overall look, the way it took up the color or the dye and the retan, and other ones look great, fabulous. It's dependent on the raw material. So it's pretty critical about where we buy, how consistent it is, but even change in the time of year can be a factor.
Oh, really?
But for what Fritz was saying is we've got boot leather, we've got belt leather, we've got jean patch leather, we've got garment leather, we've got case goods, we've got bag leather, we've got some upholstery, we've got linings, gussets, some glove, splits. I mean, it's a wide gamut.
Yeah, we talked a little bit in the tour about how some of the little imperfections, and I was actually quite shocked at what you guys were rejecting, because I was like, I barely see those flaws. And I think we kind of talked about how like the consumer doesn't, when they get those boots, they're so far down the chain that they don't always remember that this came from an animal that was alive, walking around, rubbing into barbed wire, and they see this really beautifully finished product, but they don't. It's just hard to connect that if they've lived in a city their whole life, or they've never been out and seen how cattle are raised and stuff. And so that's part of like what I really would like to do with like all this and this channel is really bridge that connection, because not everyone, it's not their fault they're raised in the city that don't understand that. You can't always just have people taking tours to farms like, oh, now I understand, now I can appreciate my boots. You know, it's like you have to like bridge that gap and show people like, oh yeah, this is like a natural product from an animal, and to honor that animal's life, we're using that product, and you're going to wear that product for several years rather than this synthetic material that's going to end up in a landfill in a year and a half. Yeah.
And I don't know, I think there's a part of it where it's like, you know, you look at the more natural leathers, I think they're more interesting than just, you know, we did the tour. There's some leathers out there that are, you know, it's a fully finished piece of leather. And, you know, it's just, you know, cutability. That's what they are. And then you look at, you know, some of the logger leathers. I mean, they're very natural. You see some scratches. You see, you know, markings on the hide that say, okay, this was an animal. And I think it makes a product that's a little more interesting to look at least. And, you know, maybe if you get a pair of boots that has a small little scratch on it, it's just something that's, you know, a little more personal, I guess.
Yeah, to me, it kind of tells a story that it is an animal, like having those flaws in it. It's like, oh, this was an animal that at some point was like doing its thing, you know? Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a favorite leather individually? Like, oh, this is my favorite leather we tan. Or are you just like, it's all leather. I've been doing this for my whole life. Leather's leather.
I've got my favorites.
Yeah? You got a favorite?
There's like a handful that it's like, okay, they're all cool, but I don't know. I really like...
Yeah, I'm curious.
Well, I like Double Shot.
Oh, okay, that's a good leather.
It's a pretty unique product, and it's fairly new for us, but yet it's about as good as it gets for being sort of the old lifestyle type leathers in today's market. And so I think that's come a long way, and that took a while to get the development done.
Okay. So what is it about that Double Shot that it makes it different that you like above and beyond other leathers? Because like even for like a leather nerd, I'm like, hey, I've heard of Double Shot, but I don't know exactly what the whole thing is.
Well, I think ultimately what it came down to is when you look at the machinery we've got out here nowadays, and which is really put into the tannery because of the heavy leathers, and we got to get the stuff flat. The perspective of the customer always wants it to look tabletop, and whereas as we were just talking about, leather to me is about being natural. It's about having some character. It's about not every shoe looking the exact same. I mean, if you want that, you can go to Nike.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's what leathers we do make here in the tannery. I like to see the natural undertones of the skin, the growth marks, not necessarily a lot of healed scratches or anything in it, but there's, the occasional briar mark is not a problem. I don't have an issue with it. I'm doing some upholstery work in a car. I want to have a little of that.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a full-on blasted in print that you can't even tell it's leather,
right,
which is where a lot of upholstery's gone. But going back to certainly the double shot's got a little more give left in it. It's very juicy and it forms like nobody's business on the last. I mean, it's really a nice lastable piece of leather, whereas a lot of these heavyweight boots, even though they've got great shape to them, these guys are like gorillas to get these things down on the last. I don't know how they do it. The temper is 15 to 18 on that, and it just like, they soak it. I mean, that helps.
I think Nick for sure soaks it overnight in water or something compound.
Still, I think the double shot is a really cool piece of leather, and also the various crazy trails that we make, or Old Town folklore. More grease, more gut to it. It does tend to dry out, but it weathers so well once the boot is being worn. And unlike a lot of the imports that come from China or Asia or Mexico, the stuff is so dry. It's like pillow puff dry.
Yeah.
And
it's almost like foam. I've seen it where it just like it flakes off almost like foam. It's so
it's
dry.
airy.
Yeah.
And break tends to go pretty quick on it. But this is where certainly the handed down formulas that we've got and the development of the North American type leathers have always had a good gutsy grease and oil to them, well nourished, and a lot of veg in them.
Yeah, because I've even noticed that pretty much across the board. Anytime we cut a pair of boots or shoes that the leather's clearly from China or some other place, you can feel it's almost it's like airy. It just has a completely different feel to it. Yeah. What's your favorite leather?
I would say I really like double shot's great leather. Tobacco Stampede is one of my favorites, though like the old version. It's just a very natural.
That's a good one too.
I think it's really beautiful. You get all the highlights of, you get fat lines, you get scratches, you get, you kind of get the whole character of the animal, but it's a really nice glovey. I mean, it's soft. It's a milled leather, and it's just really comfortable, and it looks great, and it ages super well.
That was Thorogood. Do you remember? Have you ever looked at the Thorogood boots?
Oh yeah, I love Thorogoods.
Okay.
That's that leather.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's a couple different versions of it. The old version, I think, is the best one.
That is a good leather too, because we talk about it all the time. I didn't realize you guys tanned it. So you guys tan. Oh wow. Because that's pretty much out of any of the affordable boot range, that's my favorite leather, because it's so malleable and flexible, but still gives you some support. You don't have to spend 4 weeks breaking it.
That was like a moccasin leather.
Oh, okay.
Originally, that was a really nice, well-nourished moccasin leather. Now, as we were talking about selection, they ran into buzzsaw of, thinking they weren't getting enough yield, and they wanted something a little more uniform, and we've certainly gone down that road. And now there's sort of the whispers in the wind that, well, maybe we got to go back, sort of tailor back to the old stuff, because it sold so well compared to now. You've got H.H. Brown that makes it. We've got certainly the whites, which is a version of it, and that's actually the real stuff that you've got on your feet over there.
No, that's Dirty Dark Brown, Crazy Chief. Yeah,
that's a Crazy Chief. Well, it's not far off of that. Crazy Chief is a very well-nourished piece also.
Well, going back to what you were saying earlier, that even we were talking in the airport, he's like, I've worn these for like a year and a half, and they look brand new. They haven't even
Come on, put that up on the table. Let's see.
Yeah, put it in front of the camera there.
Yeah. Come on, get it up there. That's a 2-year-old boot?
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God. It looks like it's in great shape.
Need to get out and do some real work, Taylor.
You haven't even worn out those soles yet.
I haven't oiled these at all either.
The brake is really good on the toe, as also the shaft of the boot.
For a non-complete leather nerd, what does brake mean?
So brake is how the leather bends.
So what's a good brake versus bad brake? Like, what are you looking for?
Well,
Pipiness.
Taylor, put your boots in
Pipiness
front.
in
That's
the
good
boot.
brake. So really, what we would say is good brake is you're not getting large wrinkles in your. I think kind of a good. What the other leather choice I was going to say was Red Dog, because looking at the boots that you had, at least what I saw them online, the brake on them was like phenomenal throughout the whole boot. It looked like the toe. Really
boot
tight
were you
brake.
looking at?
His boot.
The collab
one?
we did with Whites, a big old Packer style boot with the Red Dog.
Do you have one that's worn in there?
No, not Red Dog. I could actually go grab a worn boot though and kind of describe it.
Grab it. Also, Fritz Senior, if at any point in this, you're welcome to be like, I'm out of here. Too long. I'm sick of this. Wait, I have a question. While your pops is out of the room, do you both call each other Fritz?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Well, I call him Dad, and he calls me
that's fair.
Fritz.
I don't call my dad Quentin. But like your mom.
My mom. So my family calls me Freddie just because.
Oh, that's also a good name.
But nobody else calls me. That's just family. So basically, when I was little, my mom would be like screaming through the house like Fritz, and it's both like what? Because you never know who she's calling for. So.
Right. What about around the factory? Who does everyone just like Fritz, and both of you guys are like, huh?
No, around the factory, I'm Junior.
That's the original product right there.
So
really?
that's old tobacco Stampede. But so to answer your question about brake, and I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but what brake is essentially on the bend of the leather. So this is what we would call tight brake, because you're not getting a super. I guess I've got a. Here on my boots, this is what I would say is a little, not good brake.
Okay, so those little rolls, the tighter they are,
the better the brake.
And does that actually correlate with some sort of durability, or is it all about aesthetics? Or
so it comes into where on the hide they cut, and then the retan. So if you have a really good dense retan, it's heavy veg or whatever else you're putting in. It's going to help fill the gaps a little bit.
Fiber structure.
And fill the fiber structure so that when you go on that bend, you're not having separation between the grain and the actual fibers below.
So when you see those little, did you say piping?
Pipey, yeah.
Okay. Is that essentially the loose fibers, like just loosening up even more and creating a little bit of like air in between?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. And so the tighter that is, the smaller they are, the stronger and potentially more durable it would be.
Yeah, the more that's packed in there, the better.
Yeah.
That's why when you look at like cordovan shoes, you've heard that. Those typically, is it cordovan?
Yeah, it might turn to be flexible.
Yeah. Typically those, you'll have very low break in that.
Yeah,
it's a very dense, but I saw you've got a little bit of break in yours.
Do I? I'll take this one off so you can check it out. At least cordovan doesn't smell too bad, fortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah,
trying to make excuses for stinky
these
boots.
They're pretty good. I mean, really, you can see that crease line is really it's almost non-existent in cordovan.
Yeah.
Now that's just the give of probably between the lining and the
little counter there.
Cordovan itself, but short of that, there's very little crease. Whereas in a steer hide, you're going to start to see a little more of that. Even these are pretty
separation.
good. Yeah, that separation.
Is that cordovan the flesh side of the? Not the.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the
Yeah, because this
reverse
is Corwin's
side.
cordovan.
It's a reverse side that's been buffed and finished.
So I think that's something that does help the brake there.
It's a way different product.
Those are nice.
Wow. Cordovan is very small piece of leather that comes off the rump of a
I always tell people,
horse.
like, these are my $900 horse butt cheek boots. And they're like, what'd you say? And I was like, it's from the leather from a horse's ass. Yeah. They're like, we can't be friends.
So when they're getting whipped, they don't even feel it. They're just like, hit me harder.
That's interesting, because that's what I was saying. I'm like, you guys know, technically from the YouTube perspective, you'd be like, oh, he's a leather expert. And I'm like, I feel like I only know like 20% of like the real deep leather information. Because like, I'd heard of brake and I know generally what it is, but like this fine details is really interesting. you guys should start a YouTube channel. I was trying to convince Fritz to do it.
I'm gonna need to hire a media person.
Just move to Utah, quit the Tannery game.
Come Warfield, be the on retainer leather expert.
So is the goal in all this for you to take over the whole tannery, or is that a sensitive subject or anything?
No, I think I think it's my goal. When I first started, at least when I first started in high school, I was like, I worked in the shipping department and I didn't particularly enjoy it too much.
Fair enough.
And then he made me, the summers after, I moved into like the wet end of the tannery and slowly learned it. And so after I graduated college, I was kind of like, this was the...
this is your destiny,
Yeah, it was my
Luke.
destiny.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like you look at what it is, and I think it's like, if I'd be stupid not to do it, I think, there's a family history of doing it. And I don't know, it's just kind of a duty, I guess, at this point.
And that's like I really like that idea of making Fritz Jr. start at the mail room and doing all the different jobs. So is that essentially what you did, is kind of like learn some of the processes throughout the entire plant?
Yeah, I was mostly on the bottom floor, though. I mean, the wet end was the place I was the
end?
most. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was running the sample mills.
Okay.
Which I got to come in for 8 hours a day and tan during the summer.
Is
Retan.
it hard to get people to work here? Like, do you guys struggle, like the boot makers struggle to find people that are willing and wanting to come do manual labor?
Back a half a year ago, maybe call it a year ago, it was a little challenging. The labor market was pretty tight, but now it's like right now it's wide open.
Really?
Yeah, we're fully staffed. And
wow.
We can produce a little more. And but I got to say, going back to certainly where we're at with a family business, I love it that Fritz came in and decided to step up to the plate. And I think it's a pretty diversified business when you start looking at all aspects, from procurement to making sure the product is right, and the customer development and the need for the products out there. Once you get sort of entrenched with customers, they get used to your leather and they want to hopefully come back.
Yeah.
And most times they do. We're making unique items here that we've all developed. We all have our fingers in it. It's not one person that's out there making the leather every day. It takes really a team of people, a team of craftsmen and people with critical eye to bring it through and get it done correctly.
For us, we're making something that goes into a product or it goes into a final product. And I think it's incredibly fulfilling. You look around, we're both running up and down the 5 floors of this building every day.
You guys' cats must be huge.
Oh, yeah.
Wearing big boots around and 40 flights of stairs a day.
But so on the other hand, it's, you go out and you drive by a construction site and you see people wearing Thorogoods, and it's like, oh, I had a hand in that. I think it's something...
Or motorcycles riding by. We used to do a lot of Harley work. They've pulled a fair amount of leather out, but we still make a fair amount.
That's so cool.
That was when we had like the 125 anniversary a few years ago. Maybe it was 100th in Milwaukee, and all these Harley bikes roll in, and they've got a lot of our bag leather. I've been doing that for 20 years. We put out a lot of leather of those guys.
That's got to make you feel good when you see those like Thorogoods on the construction side. You see a Harley rolling past, you're like, that's us.
Yeah.
That's cool. Let's say like if you had $1 billion to do whatever you wanted to do with Seidel leather, like what's your dream for this business? Like, is there anything you're like, oh, I wish we had this piece of equipment, or I wish we could make this leather, or I wish we could have a 100,000 square foot factory? Or like, what is the big goal of Seidel?
Honestly, no, I would say the factory is actually well equipped,
and it's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's taken a lot of years to do it, but honestly, I think we've got really the majority of the equipment to make anything that we need to. But the biggest challenges are like we were talking earlier, it's getting technical people that have a good critical eye, that want to learn it and want to develop the products, it's really hard to find good technicians right now, and my generation is starting to age out. So we've got a handful of guys that are, sort of in their sunset period, and so the next gen has got to come along, and Fritz has learned a lot, and he's got a really good idea and a good eye for it at this point, but he can't do it alone. He's got to have people, and it's really hard to get the technicians. A lot of them are South America or Mexico or in Asia, and it's hard to find these types of people. It's like finding a good chef versus a guy who is just the basic chef. Can you tolerate the food? Yeah, that's the issue. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. As far as the facility goes, could we be on one floor? It'd be nice, but that's not in the cards. It's too expensive to move an operation these days. And so it's really, when you look at the U.S. domestic production, it's there's some challenges that are going to be coming along here because of certainly where the ownership is with some of these tanneries at this point, and whether it's Milwaukee or out in the East Coast, or Foot will probably continue on because they're a corporate organization.
Are they tied to Red Wing too?
Yeah, Red Wing owns them. Yeah. And so I imagine they'll probably keep on going. But they've got labor challenges like everybody, and especially the critical eye guys that you need that have the talent. You gotta teach it from within.
Yeah, I've noticed it almost like it's either people either have it or they don't for whatever you're hiring for. Like people are either just trying to get a job, or people are like actually interested and want to learn. They want to engage. They want to like improve their skills with whatever it happens to be. And there seems to be like a really hard dividing line between different people. But
amazingly enough, once you've got certain people, I mean, you can define your workforce, and there are quite a few of our workers that are really good in the respect that they understand what we're trying to do. They understand looking at the leather and what those critical issues may be with it. And those are the kind of guys you try to promote. Yeah. And we've done that. We try and bring them up from within.
Yeah, because I have a super small business, and we've only hired maybe 20 people total. But when you do find that type of person, it's like, oh, I really want to learn this. Like, give me more. How can I improve? Like, even if they don't have any skills, you're like, I'll take you over someone that has tons of skills with no ambition and no interest, that are just here to do the job.
Right.
And it's so hard to find people like that. Let's say the keys were handed over 10 years from now. What is there anything that you're like, I would love for Seidel to do this, this, and this? Or is there any like ambitions for the next generation of Seidel?
I don't know. I think in the time that I've been here, I mean, there's been a lot of change, and I'm really thankful that my dad is. I mean, it's not just like
open-minded.
Well, no, it's like we have this. You have this facility, but it's not just like we're standing still. You let the machinery go. I mean, you saw over in the other building with the machines that we're putting in. I think it's a constant. We're constantly trying to evolve and improve our processes. I don't think there's like one. If I had $1 billion and like the one big fix, I don't really think there is. I think the way my dad describes it to me was there's machines that you can implement. It's like there are the needs to have and there are the nice to have. And you head now, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel. Rachel's our office manager. She's the brains behind the operation.
You want to get in the camera?
I think she's on camera.
Come on,
sorry,
you got
Rachel.
a little tanning jacket on. Come on.
I have to go sell Girl Scout cookies.
Smile. We got a camera right there.
I am smiling.
I'll take some of those Polynesians if you have any. I said I'll take some of those Polynesian Girl Scout cookies if you have any.
I do. So.
Do you really?
I'm always prepared. I'm a Girl Scout.
What's your price? Name your price.
$5.
$5? That's it?
Oh, I don't have any cash on me.
I'm sure you know how to Venmo.
That's true.
You really want some?
I really want some.
Put a box out. We'll get you.
I'll pay for them tomorrow.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're off tomorrow.
Oh, it's Saturday. Yeah, it's Friday.
We'll leave you $5.
Yeah, I'll pay tomorrow. Yeah.
Taylor's going to leave you $5.
Yeah, Taylor will take care of us.
It's going for a good cause.
Oh, I love those.
Caramel Delights.
Yes.
Those did they change the name? Didn't they used to be called like Samoans?
There's Samoas, yeah.
Polynesians or
They're
something?
called Caramel Delights in Wisconsin.
I'm gonna get canceled. Yeah, you're part of the interview now. It's not much of an
The
interview.
best part. Well, thank you. Are you going to share with them?
Well, he bought it, so we'll see if he shares.
Put a
it or
whole
not.
box down.
For the car ride.
There's 2 different bakers, so they have 2 different names.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Thanks for the cookies.
You're welcome. Thank you for supporting Girl Scouts.
Okay, enjoy.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
See ya.
See you, Rachel.
Bye.
But I was saying is I think there's machinery there's nice to haves and then there's needs to have or need to have. And I think we're pretty well equipped. I think, I think the grand plan is to, keep making the quality leather that we're making.
Yeah.
And just try to expand it. I think there's potential to expand it, not only in the U.S., but, outside the U.S. too. And it's just, trying to get people to recognize, leather is a natural product. We're not really making a whole lot of the super uniform finished leathers.
Yeah.
And to try to expand some of those more aniline leathers out into the marketplace.
Right.
I guess that's the.
I feel like those were 2 answers I did not expect, but that must if you guys, if with those answers with $1 billion we'd probably just keep doing what we're doing. I feel like that's a pretty solid answer.
Actually, with $1 billion, I'd buy a yacht and I'd go to the Bahamas.
I was like, you guys must have it down pretty good because that is kind of the thing. If you enjoy your job and you enjoy what you do and you love what the product you are, the product that you're making, a lot of times I just like what we do, and I feel like it's a pretty rare thing. So respect for you guys for having a job and a family business that you're so involved in and so passionate about that you're like, if we had $1 billion, we'd probably keep doing what we're doing. That's wild. That's cool. Okay, last question so we can get Fritz Sr. out of here. How much, and you don't have to answer any of these questions, but this is just more for my curiosity. How much boot corporate espionage goes on? Does anyone ever try to be like, hey, what's that leather? Get us this leather. Is there any is there a bunch of drama in the boot world between the leathers? You don't have to say any names, just curious.
Well, I don't know.
That's a question for Charlie.
Yeah, it'd probably be more the salesman guys. The tendency is, depending on what level of leather you're making at it could be in the boot or the jean patch or the various different products. I mean, ultimately, you end up getting some swatches in the mail, and it's probably from a competitor, and the customer's not happy. They want to shop it, and either you duplicate it or you make something that's fairly close, or maybe it needs to be modified. So that's a hard one to call. I mean, it comes at you in all directions. But ultimately, when you go to a show, there are people like you that are using leather, and either you're out looking for a new source because the old source is died, or you got problems getting it, and this is sort of the way the business goes. And or sometimes the products you're making they age out of style, and you got to re-engineer. And as far as that boot product goes, I would imagine that, knowing the business that we do out in the West Coast, I'm sure there's been numerous swatches of ours that have been thrown to other tanneries. It's inherently a hard product to get uniform consistently and push the volume out. And we've got a few secret techniques in the tannery that help us get there. But
so there is some secrets in the industry, right? Because I think most people would assume it's tanning leather, you just tan leather. But there was a couple things that we saw that he's like, don't record that. I'm like, fair enough. I'll make sure I approve all the B-roll before we post anything. And I found that interesting because it's such an age-old process, and it's so it's done across the world is what I'm trying to say. That I would have assumed that everyone knows exactly how it's done. Everyone uses the same machines, but there's some interesting processes that everyone kind of is this is our specialty.
Yeah, I think it's the way we always kind of talk about is, everything is proprietary that you make, and even if another tannery does get your formula, it's not, you know, they're not going to
It's
be able
not
to
necessarily
replicate it
reproducible at their facility exactly the same.
Yeah, and that's if
what
they're
happens.
going off the same, you know, starting point as you. And so I think something that we don't really talk about a lot is, you know, the difference in all the retans that we're running. And I mean, that's the real guts of the leather. I mean, you can finish a leather any way you want, but what really kind of makes that crucial product is how beefed up that retan is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the, you know, the critical
Yeah,
thing
the base
that we
has
do
got
really
to
well.
be relatively good and correct.
Okay. Do you guys
And it
ever
makes-
get any calls from brands that are like, hey, you made this leather. This is our specialty leather. Like, do you guys ever get anyone upset at you about any like the secret?
I've never
formulas or
heard
anything?
anybody
Really?
talk to me like that. Never.
Maybe they're too afraid of you.
I doubt it. They probably just don't know where to find us.
But it seems like you guys, all the different tanneries in the U.S. have a decent relationship too, or is it kind of like a heated
No,
thing?
it's pretty friendly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've gathered.
I mean, I've
from-
been in hundreds of tanneries over the years. Everybody's always pretty friendly.
Because how many tanneries are left? We got Horween, we have you guys, SB Foot, Wicked and Craig. Law. Because I know that one went under. It's a
Tasman.
Tasman, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's only like
There's
5 or
really
6
not that
decent
many.
sized tanneries.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so
I would say
crazy.
they're all the best of the best, though. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
pretty. I mean, you look at SB Foot, you look at Horween, and us and Law. I think we're all. I mean, you think about it, a lot of them are holdovers from when the tanning industry was huge in the U.S. And I think there's a lot of history that came with it, and a lot of really solid leather making that came with it too. So I think everybody's kind of a, you know.
Yeah, the
You
people
think
that are
about it-
left are pretty solid.
Yeah, it's like it
I
seems
would
like they
say.
all have their own niche. They're like, we do this, they do this, we do this, and it's so it's cool that you guys have lasted so long. So what is it that Seidel that makes you guys be around for so long and still being able to make leather at this scale in 2023? Like, what is like the strategic advantage? Like, what is it that you guys do that you feel like gives you the advantage over other people?
Diversity,
Okay.
I think. Many tanneries in the old days were, they were sort of one-man shows where either you're running lightweight leathers, medium weight leathers, box type leathers. Everybody had their specialties, and then when the business transitioned to Asia, a lot of these tanneries just couldn't support their volume. The large guys, they were running 5,000 to 7,000 sides a day. I mean, they were just huge. At that point, we weren't that large, and still are not that large. But what we did do is we diversified into different lines of leather, and so
And produce
it's
the hardest working leather in the world. Out of the hundreds of boots we've cut apart, the most durable leathers that we always see is your guys' leathers. So props for that.
what's the test? I mean, running a nail through, or
Yeah, we'll do like a puncture test. We'll do tear tests. We'll take measurements of certain things. We'll do a bunch of different, or we'll gather a bunch of information from cobblers and people that wear the boots to kind of gather which ones are lasting the longest and which one of these brands or which of these brands that make the heaviest duty boots in the world, what leathers are they using for their work boots? It's always your guys' leathers. And the Thorogood was a really surprising one to me because I love that leather. I had no idea that you guys made that leather. Yeah. Because this leather in particular really balances the durability with the malleability of because those really heavyweight leathers you guys make for Nicks and Whites and JK, those things are a bear to break in. That takes like 3 months to break those things in.
I don't know where they sell all those, frankly. It's an amazing thing to me that you can get. I mean, Junior wears his quite a bit, but whenever I put them on, I'm just like, it's a little hard.
That hurts your bunions? Is that the...
Well, not my bunions, but it's just, my feet are they feel a little tender.
Well, and I think it's all about the support, right? Like, because some people, they want that ankle support and that leg support versus like this Thorogood leather, it's all about the comfort.
Yep.
And some people do need that in their work. And you know what? Because I was a firefighter in my early 20s, and we always used all the senior guys that have been there for several years. they always wore whites, and they always wore that really thick black leather that you guys make.
Sure.
You know, and it was like, that was the go-to.
What were you wearing?
I wore the Hawthorns, the cheaper versions of whites, because I couldn't afford the real deals. You know, I was like 20, and I was like, ooh, I can't afford $500. That's what's crazy about all these Pacific Northwest brands. Their boots now have gone up to like $700, and people are still buying them. But it's like, it's one of these things. It's the same thing you guys are doing, where it's American made. It's the last bastions of American hard labor products for the working class people that really need to rely on those products. And you know, you can buy them from overseas, but like a lot of people that are in that blue collar industry, they want American made. They want high quality. They want to be able to support their own country. And it's really cool to see how you guys and all these Pacific Northwest brands and all these other companies are still like still doing it, even though people can get cheaper alternatives, like faster alternatives, but people really value that quality and that ability to support their own country, which I think is really cool.
I think there's a...
What do you see out there with... Now you see a boot like what Fritz has got on versus knowing if you were a firefighter, you know that all those brands started with black, basically caulk boots, and then went into fire boots. And do you see more of that trend going into the lifestyle type products now? And is that where this is heading?
Yeah, it seems like that's where it is going, because you know, and you guys probably know this just as much as I do, that all these brands started out as logging companies, then logging died off, and then firefighting really, like that industry really took off, and all their boots were now positioned towards firefighters. And now as firefighters have more adopted these synthetic boots and these cheaper like Italian made boots, they're not buying as many firefighting boots from these brands. And so now they pivoted even further into the fashion world and like the style world. And that's where I think a lot of these brands are finding their new horizons is by making these high quality American made products that maybe they don't need all this leather. Maybe they don't need this like 9-ounce like upper leather, but people appreciate it and they love it. And they love to be able to invest in something that they know could potentially outlive them. And so roundabout way of saying, it seems like the lifestyle stuff is getting more and more popular, but that doesn't always mean that it's like the quality is going to suffer, because I think it almost matters more to those lifestyle people, the quality, than the people who are actually using them for the quality. And so if anything, it seems like it's driving higher quality because it's gone more casual, which I think is a really interesting trend.
Yeah. I think something that kind of goes back to, I know people are like, oh, it's a $500 to $700 boot, but you know, you look at the supply chain of where a lot of those, or like how those boots are made. I mean, it's all premium materials, and I think when you're kind of buying a lot of boots overseas, I don't think the value of the product is actually, you know, kind of seen in the final price that you pay for it. I think there's, and I think, you know, I guess maybe I'm not saying this correctly, but
we can always edit it out.
The U.S. boot makers, it's you get the value of the boot is proportional to the quality of the actual final product and the materials that are going in. I think that's something that's kind of lost when you're buying, you know, low priced stuff from overseas, I guess is my point.
And it seems like the tide's turning. It seems like more and more people are wanting quality. You know, we're kind of coming out of this like fast Amazon phase of our culture where everyone wants just cheap stuff fast, get it to me as fast as possible. I just want it affordable. And now people are like, oh, I can see like the environmental impact of this. I can see the impact of my health. I can see the impact of all these different things. Maybe we should go more back to natural things and the way that like, I don't even know how to say it, but they value the sustainability from what you were saying. Like, I'm going to buy something once and buy it for life rather than buy something new every single year, because it's higher quality. It's better for me. It's better for the environment. And it seems like that tide is slowly turning.
Yeah.
So that's what's really cool about what you guys do. And that's why I was so excited to come out here. And we were just like drooling over all the machines that you guys probably like, yeah, whatever. It's just a machine. So I super appreciate you letting us completely invade your factory or tannery, and especially Fritz Sr. I know you didn't have a lot of time, so I appreciate you sitting down and chatting with us. And Fritz Jr., appreciate it as well.
No problem.
Any final thoughts on this interview? I told you it was pretty casual. It's not bad, right? It wasn't.
How's the leather working for you?
Your leather, we love it, honestly, because it's the thing that you guys do best for us is it's highly consistent and very, very predictable. Like, we know exactly what we're going to get from you guys, whereas other tanneries we've worked with, we're like, well, let's see what this batch looks like. Let's try to match it best we can. So your guys' consistency and quality is really what's made us continue to come back to you guys. So
good. Appreciate it.
Okay, I appreciate everything you guys do, and I'll do the outro and just say subscribe to the Rose Anvil 2 channel if you want to see more of these videos and interviews. I love doing them, so subscribe and all the other stuff. And thank you guys again. Check out Seidel, the links in the description, all the other stuff. And thanks again.
SeidelTanning.com.
SeidelTanning.com.
Seidel Leather on Instagram.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, thanks guys. See ya.